The surgeon smiled before he said a single word. The transplant was successful. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember hugging anyone. I only remember crying. My little sister was going to live. David wrapped his arms around me. He kissed my forehead. Then he whispered, I told you everything would be okay. Family takes care of family. I buried my face against his shoulder. At that moment, I thought I had the best husband in the world. I thought my family had survived the hardest day we'd ever face. I had no idea that while doctors were closing the incision on my side, the two people I loved most were carrying a secret that would destroy everything. My name is Naomi Ellis. I'm 34 years old, and this is the story of how giving away a piece of my body cost me almost everything. Kayla isn't just my younger sister. She's the closest thing I'll ever have to a daughter. When our mother died, I was 22. Kayla was only 12. She stopped sleeping through the night. She stopped smiling. Sometimes she'd wake up crying because she dreamed Mom came home. So I learned how to braid hair. I learned how to help with algebra homework. I packed school lunches before going to work. I sat through every dance recital, every school play, every parent-teacher meeting. People used to mistake me for her mother. Neither of us ever corrected them. She called me Sissy, but every now and then, when she wanted something, she'd smile and say, "Second Mom." I never said no to that smile. Never. Years passed. She finished college, found a job she loved, started building a life of her own. Then one ordinary Tuesday, she collapsed at work. Kidney failure. Everything changed after that. The doctors explained that she would eventually need a transplant. Without even thinking, I volunteered to be tested. David squeezed my hand. You don't even have to ask. We're doing this together. A week later, the hospital called. I was a perfect match. I cried all the way home. Not because I was scared, because I finally had the chance to save my little sister. The surgery wasn't cheap. Insurance covered some of it. Not enough. I remember sitting at our kitchen table staring at the estimate. $80,000. I looked at David. I don't know how we do this. He didn't hesitate. We use the savings. I stared at him. That's everything we've worked for. He smiled. So we'll earn it again. My family called him a hero. Friends said I was blessed. Even Kayla cried. I don't know how I'll ever repay either of you. David simply smiled. You don't owe us anything. Looking back, I realized that wasn't completely true. The morning of the surgery, Kayla squeezed my hand so tightly it almost hurt. Sissy, I'm scared. I smiled. So am I. But when we wake up, we're both going home. Tears filled her eyes. I don't deserve you. I laughed softly. Good. Because you're stuck with me anyway. She started crying. I hugged her. I thought she was afraid of the operation. Now I know. She was afraid of losing me forever. Recovery is a strange thing. Some days, you feel almost normal. Other days, getting out of bed feels like climbing a mountain. Those first few weeks after surgery, Kayla and I practically lived in pajamas. We compared scars, complained about hospital food, watched terrible reality shows. Sometimes we'd fall asleep halfway through a movie, both exhausted before 9 o'clock. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt like family. David took care of both of us. He cooked dinner every night, picked up prescriptions, reminded us when it was time to take our medication. He even learned how to make the bland vegetable soup Kayla's dietitian recommended. Everyone kept telling me, "You married a wonderful man." I agreed, every single time. Then, little things started changing. Not enough for anyone else to notice, just enough for me. One evening, I walked into the kitchen. David and Kayla were talking quietly. The moment they saw me, They stopped. Neither of them looked guilty, just uncomfortable. David smiled. Hey. Kayla smiled too. How are you feeling? I answered. But something about the silence that followed didn't feel normal. I told myself I was imagining it. A few days later, we were watching television. I got up to make tea. When I came back, David had moved. He was sitting beside Kayla instead of beside me. They were laughing about something. The moment I walked into the room, the laughter stopped. Again, I sat down. No one said anything. The room suddenly felt much colder. There were dozens of moments like tiny, forgettable, on their own. They meant nothing. Together, they became impossible to ignore. David always noticed when Kayla looked tired. He remembered exactly when her medication was due. He knew which foods upset her stomach. He knew when she hadn't finished lunch. Sometimes, it felt like he was paying more attention to her recovery than I was. Then I'd immediately feel guilty for thinking it. She was my little sister, and he was just trying to help. One Sunday afternoon, I called my father. I almost didn't bring it up, but something inside me needed reassurance. I said, Dad, have you ever had the feeling something wasn't right? Even when you couldn't explain why? There was a pause. Then he chuckled softly. Naomi, you've both been through a major surgery. David's exhausted. So are you. Don't let fear convince you there's a problem where there isn't one. I smiled. I know. He was probably right. After everything we'd been through, maybe I was just emotionally drained. Maybe I was reading too much into ordinary moments. I wanted to believe that. I really did. A few days later, Kayla had a follow-up appointment. David insisted on driving her. I offered to come. David smiled. You should rest. I've got this. Kayla nodded. We'll only be an hour. I watched them leave through the front window. Then I laughed at myself. What was wrong with me? They were going to a doctor's appointment. Nothing more. I decided to tidy up while the house was quiet, mostly to keep my mind busy. I started with the laundry, folded towels, changed the sheets. Then I walked into the guest bedroom, Kayla's room. The curtains were half closed. Sunlight spilled across the floor. Her laundry basket sat beside the bed. I bent down to pick it up. As I lifted it, the corner caught the bedside table. A thick white envelope slid off the edge. It landed on the floor with a soft thud. A folded document slipped halfway out. I sighed. Sorry, Kayla. I reached down to put everything back together. Then I noticed the hospital logo. Across the top, it read, Prenatal Services. I frowned. Prenatal? That couldn't be right. I slowly unfolded the paper. My eyes found Kayla's name, then the date, then the words that made my heart stop. 12 weeks pregnant. I sat down on the edge of the bed. My little sister was going to have a baby. I wasn't angry. I wasn't suspicious. I was heartbroken. Why hadn't she told me? She must have been terrified. She'd been fighting kidney failure, recovering from a transplant, and carrying a child, all at the same time. I wiped away a tear, then smiled sadly. Oh, Kayla, you should have told me. I carefully slid the paper back into the envelope, ready to put it exactly where I'd found it. Then I noticed something else. Another folded document, hidden deep inside, thicker, more official. My hand stopped. For a moment, I almost left it there. Then a voice inside my head whispered, Read it. For a long moment, I just stared at the second document. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Across the top it read, Voluntary Paternal Genetic Screening. I frowned. Slowly, I unfolded the page. There were medical numbers, laboratory codes, patient information, then one name, David Ellis. I blinked. No, There had to be some mistake. Maybe another David. Maybe another patient. My eyes raced down the page until they reached the final line. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. Everything around me disappeared. The room, the walls, the sunlight, even the sound of my own breathing. Only one thought remained. David is the father. I read the page again, then again, as if the words might change. They never did. Suddenly, every strange moment over the last 2 months finally made sense. The whispered conversations, the awkward silences, the guilty smiles, the way David always knew when Kayla hadn't eaten, the way he insisted on taking her to every appointment, the way he watched over her, not like a brother-in-law, like a father. Then I remembered something else. The money, $80,000, our entire savings. I had spent weeks believing David had sacrificed everything because he loved my family. Now I understood. He wasn't trying to save my sister. He was trying to save his unborn child. I covered my mouth to stop myself from screaming. Fresh tears rolled down my face. Not because I donated my kidney. Even knowing the truth, I would have still saved Kayla. She was my little sister. Nothing could ever change that. What broke me was that they never gave me the chance to choose. They looked me in the eyes, held my hand, prayed beside my hospital bed, thanked me, all while hiding the only truth that mattered. I whispered into the empty room. I would have done it anyway. My voice cracked. So why didn't you trust me enough to tell me? I folded the papers exactly the way I'd found them, slipped them back into the envelope, then picked it up again. This time, I wasn't putting it back. When I reached the kitchen, David was standing at the stove, slowly stirring a pot of soup. Kayla was sitting at the island wrapped in the gray blanket I'd bought her after surgery. For one strange second, they looked like an ordinary family. Then David turned around. His eyes landed on the envelope. Every bit of color disappeared from his face. The wooden spoon slipped from his hand. It struck the pot with a loud clack. Neither of them spoke. They already knew. I walked to the island, laid the envelope gently on the counter. The prenatal paperwork slid halfway out. Kayla looked at it, then looked at me. Her eyes instantly filled with tears. David finally whispered, "Naomi, I can explain." I looked at him quietly. "No, you can't." Silence. The only sound in the room was the soup simmering on the stove. Finally, David spoke again. "I'm sorry." I nodded once. "I know." He looked completely broken. "I never wanted you to be the donor." I stared at him. "Then you should have told me whose life I was saving." He lowered his head. I was afraid. Afraid I'd say no? He didn't answer. I took one slow breath. That's the part you'll never understand. I would have said yes. Both of them looked up. I would have still given Kayla my kidney. I would have still sat beside her hospital bed. I would have still prayed she survived. My voice finally broke. But I would have walked away from you before they ever wheeled me into that operating room. Kayla burst into tears. "I'm sorry." "I know." I looked at her. "And that's why this hurts so much. Because I believed you. Both of you. With everything I had." Then I turned back to David. "You didn't lose me because you had an affair." He couldn't even look at me anymore. "You lost me. The moment you decided I didn't deserve the truth." I picked up my car keys from the bowl beside the front door. No one tried to stop me. Maybe they finally understood. Some things can't be fixed. I opened the front door. The evening air hit my face. For a moment, I stood there. Then I looked back one last time. David was standing in the middle of the kitchen. Kayla was crying into her hands. The family I thought I'd spent my whole life protecting was already gone. I stepped outside, closed the door quietly behind me, and I never walked back through it again. 3 months have passed. People think the hardest part of betrayal is finding out. It isn't. The hardest part is waking up the next morning and realizing your life didn't end, even though the one you planned for did. I sold the house. There were too many memories, too many promises that no longer belong to anyone. I moved to a quiet little town a few hours away. Nothing extravagant, just a small apartment overlooking the mountains. For the first time in months, the silence felt peaceful, not lonely, peaceful. I started reading again, cooking again, taking long walks after work. Slowly, my life stopped feeling like something I had survived and started feeling like something I was building. One afternoon, a letter arrived. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Kayla. I stared at the envelope for a long time. Part of me wanted to throw it away. Instead, I opened it. There were no excuses, no blaming David, no asking for forgiveness, just one sentence, written across the middle of the page. Every morning I wake up because of your kidney, and every morning I remember the sister I betrayed. I read it twice, folded the letter, placed it back inside the envelope, then put it away. Some apologies deserve to be heard. They don't always deserve an answer. Sometimes, after a shower, I'll catch sight of the scar on my side. For a long time, it reminded me of everything I lost. Now, it reminds me of something else, that I loved without conditions, that I gave without expecting anything in return. What David and Kayla chose to do with that love belongs to them, not me. People still ask me the same question. If you knew the truth, would you still have given your sister your kidney? I always smile. Then I answer, yes. Not because they deserved it, because I deserve to remain the kind of person who saves the people she loves. I refuse to let their betrayal rewrite who I am. I lost a kidney. I lost my marriage. I lost the sister I thought I knew. But I never lost myself. David used to tell me, family takes care of family. He was right. I kept my promise. They were the ones who forgot what family meant.